Good afternoon. Oh, goodness. I'm super tired, y'all, so let me just take y'all in all your beauty for a second. Get myself set to the scene that we are in right now. Cool, thank you. Today, unlike previous keynotes I've given in the past, I will not be talking about my poetry career directly. Because what you may not know about me is that after all of the years on stage, inspiring and entertaining people with my work, I wanted to use my words for more than the poetry I've been celebrated for. I wanted to engage listeners on a more intimate level than the audience. I wanted to be more conscious of the words I used off stage and how they impacted the lives of those around me. I wanted to try and use language as a tool to actively help people with their quality of life. This is why today, I am the proud co-creator of a mental health curriculum to teach others how to understand their mental health challenges, how to address ineffective coping, and how to navigate crisis when those we love are suffering a mental health disorder. At first, I really had no idea how I wanted to use my words outside of poetry. I have been teaching for 10 years, and in 2010, had the privilege of being the artistic director for a poetry nonprofit in Los Angeles, working with students for a semester as opposed to a workshop. I realized that more work had to be done than sitting in a room and writing poems or figuring out how others wrote great poetry. The daily interaction with students revealed that their ability to write, to create, and to share their work was dependent upon emotional factors that all seemed beyond their control. If they had broken up with someone, all they could focus on was the pain. If their father triggered another issue of trust, they might not show up for days. If they were feeling uncomfortable about the other students they were in workshops with, many would allow that to prevent them from being present in exercises. It was becoming increasingly clear to me that their ability to do the work was greatly impacted by things other than whether or not we were doing engaging prompts or fun exercises. I continued teaching you, listening, analyzing, trying to figure out what words I spoke when we weren't sharing poems in order to better grasp what language improved their ability to engage fully. Then, in late 2011, I got into a car accident that caused nerve damage all along my right side and gave me a post-concussion syndrome whose symptoms I still have today. During the first few months, I sat in low lights and silence, afraid that I would never recover mentally. As my neck began to turn left and right again, and I started to notice how sensitive my whole system had become. If I didn't sleep enough hours, headaches and nerve pain. If I watched too much TV, headaches and cognitive dissonance. If I didn't eat food with high dynamic nutrient content and regularly, headaches and lack of cognitive endurance. Before the accident, I could stay up all night writing without anything but crabbiness as a result in the morning. During my recovery, I learned that the pain I felt was an extreme response, but wondered if others' abilities became reduced when they didn't eat or they didn't sleep very well. I had always known that we're supposed to get our sleep. From a very young age, everyone tells us you need to get your sleep. Make sure you get your 8 hours of sleep. But at this point, I hadn't read much about how lack of sleep actually affects our functionality. I began to do research because I felt like feeling something may powerful guide, but I wanted to know if there was any basis for those feelings. One of the most profound studies I learned about from my partner in mental health was that during interrogation practices, the way interrogators would break down the minds of those whom they were interrogating wasn't to keep them up all night. They found that when they wanted to be able to manipulate and control the subject, all they had to do was make sure they only got 3 to 5 hours of sleep a night. This takes away their ability to resist and question, reducing them to a place of reaction, making them malleable to the intentions of their interrogators. This study really shook me to my core, because here we are at a university campus, and I've been visiting places like this for 15 years, and we all know 3 to 5 hours is kind of the norm. My recovery continued, and I continued that exploration of how my ability to think for myself is impacted by how much I sleep, what I eat, when I eat, and what volume of stimuli I expose myself to. And this happened to dovetail nicely with my friend and partner in mental health, Ross Zabo, a white guy, returning from the Peace Corps and wanting to do more than raise awareness of mental health issues. Our conversations during this transition became centered around what is the point of knowing definitions if you don't have tools? How can you address your mental development if the stigma around mental health implies that you have a mental health disorder if you do? How can people save the whales, save the planet, save their loved ones if they're at the mercy of behavior they don't understand the source of? We began building our curriculum last spring, focusing on creating videos that emotionally compelled students to participate in their own mental health, then giving them lesson plans that allow them to apply their understanding more than test their recall in order to help individualize mental health for each participant. I was brought in to use my experience with teaching and poetry in order to write scripts that brought relatable characters to life in a language that allowed participants to feel comfortable and less alone in their mental health. This was a chance for me to take what I knew about inspiring people, about entertaining them, and motivating them to action, and use it in a way to get them to invest that energy within. My words were going to be used to help young people address their mental health in more constructive ways than a poem proclaiming that everyone should work on their mental health. This process led me to places in my personal life that I did not expect it to. Whenever I got behind on a deadline and pushed myself too hard to just keep typing, I noticed how my brain would just start writing statements without context. I learned how easy it is to neglect one's mental health when writing about mental health, because it's easy to rationalize you're doing the work when you're just writing the words. Apologize for my pauses. They are videotaping me at 8 to 10 minute clips, so we need to edit this a little bit proper, y'all. Okay, back to keynote voice. Because it's easy to rationalize that you're doing the work when you're only just writing the words. I was still working with my students while writing the scripts, and noticed how ineffective language can be if I don't first listen and construct my words in a manner that meets people where they're at. Having the knowledge of how people can improve their mental health isn't the same as sharing it with them in a way that gets them out of their shame and invested in addressing their emotions. By the time the scripts and videos had been finished, it was fall. We were getting ready to launch all the things people want to launch. Putting together the finishing touches on promo and brand and all that jazz. Ross had been in close contact with our sponsor in order to make sure our work resonated with their chapter membership. We were finalizing our strategy on how to pilot the program in 5 schools to determine the results of our curriculum. I was amazed that the power of my words could reach a new medium, and that I would be able to help others and possibly improve the world just a little bit. Then, in late October, my sister came home to live with my parents because her anxiety disorder had become so unmanageable that she needed constant assistance. How did all the work I tried to do in order to help others cause me to neglect the needs of my sister? She's 32 now, and I never knew before this episode that she'd been living with anxiety disorder since she was 14. My parents hadn't known until 6 months before she moved down to Southern California. What shame caused my sister to not come to us sooner? What had I done or not done has been swirling in my head as I go pilot this curriculum or work on how to make it more accessible. How had it gone so unnoticed by the rest of my family? What had prevented us from working together before this? As you know from my bio, my parents are Chinese immigrants from the Philippines. I'm 37 now, so they come from a generation in which they grew up post-World War II. They come from a culture, though the victim of colonization for hundreds of years, is still rooted in the Pacific. Many of you know about things such as saving face, not rocking the boat, not showing weakness, and making sure that you do more than others in this country with different faces to get the same. And in this process since late October, I've been considering how culture, race, generation, migration has affected our family to where silence was acceptable. That we could suppress who we are, what we were going through for so long, for the sake of our presentation in this country. I wondered, how is shame handed down? In learning about the biological link in mental health disorders from generation to generation, I wondered if my parents had anxiety disorder. I wondered if their brothers and sisters or their grandparents had mental health disorders. This history that I was unaware of, this history that was not spoken of in the household, as I was trying to get perfect grades, be in many extracurricular activities in order to get into a very, very good school, was not occurring. We did not speak about these things because they did not equate to career, grades, or status. With everything that we saw in the media and everything in our environment, it probably felt like, without any conscious ability to articulate it, that to show that you had these mental health challenges was a sign of weakness, and probably a reason why you didn't belong in this country on top of all the other reasons when they feel like they don't belong. But then if this anxiety, this biological disorder, they're nervous to talk on the phone. Then they can't drive in traffic. Then they can't drive, and then their only friend is the internet. In our work with the mental health curriculum we've been developing, we've noticed that environment plays a huge factor in the mental health development of anyone. We are people. We are a social species. The people around us teach us through their example and their behavior, through their interactions with who they are. And in that social scenario, we seek belonging. We want to be accepted. We want to feel like being who we are is okay. So what happens to one's mental state of mind when things beyond their control may cause them to feel like they do not belong? What happens to one's mental well-being when they are in an environment where the faces that look like theirs are only online, and their only comfort is at a school where people don't understand their culture or do not have a history to get what it means to come to this country, sacrifice the past in order to build a future out of an unpredictable now? This constant thought of environment, the constant pressure we put on ourselves to prove ourselves, to show that we belong, or this constant need to achieve, to be driven, to show accomplishment. Accomplishment that many experience as not actually creating the sense of belonging that we as humans seek. What is influencing that? What is it about us that believes this rise in status will fulfill us in our mental health, will give us balance, will make us strong emotionally? What is it about this environment around us that pushes us and that we allow as healthy? When many of us here know about breakdowns, everyone is talking about a nervous breakdown, about being stressed out, about a final, about a grade, about a project, about a conference, grinding and grinding and grinding the wheels without rest or respite in order to achieve a thing, without care for who we are. Why do we not care about that as much? Why do we care so much about showing others that we can, oh, word up, I'll pause right now.
You're good, Beau.
Thank you very much. So yeah, where was I in my notes? I don't even remember. So let's just pick up where I think I left off. So why do we want to always achieve these things? Show the world that we've done this, that we've done that, at the expense of our own feelings, of happiness, of contentment, of feeling safe, trusted, like there are people to listen to us. Why are those things not as valued as showing people that we have a degree from a prestigious university? Why is the joy that is so inherently human, the happiness that is intrinsically a part of humans in this world, on this planet, why is that not as valued as acquiring, as building the external that is outside of who we are? And we're at this conference today, and we could focus on it being about racism. We could focus on it being about immigration. We could focus on it being about another culture, another time, another place. We could focus on the difficulty between the translation between a daughter and her parents when they don't share the same first language. And if we focused on any one of those elements, we would be correct, but we would not be encompassing the whole. For there are aspects in each of those categories that do impact the overall sense of why to be Asian in America is generally to also not address your mental health needs. It's been a troubling statistic in this community for generations. Not seeking help, not looking for therapy, not admitting that the things within us, the feelings that we have, require more care than tuning out to a television or going and getting drunk on the weekend. And we are now at a time when you, bright, beautiful, wonderful, bold you, are being inundated with a tremendous volume of stimuli. So much so that there isn't enough time. And you live in a culture where you have to consume it all. You have to react to everything. Everything that's coming out of you demands a reaction, and you feel compelled to do so. And in that reality, where is the space for what you think about things? Where is the space for how your environment impacts you? Where is your space to try and understand where your parents are coming from and how to better connect in the way of communicating that they best understand? Where is the space? Why aren't we making it? I don't know those answers for each of you individually. I only know the numbers that we look at every day. Outside of race, on a general societal level, to 75% of people who experience a mental health disorder first experience it in college. 90% of the people who seek to work on their mental health challenges experience substantial improvement. And yet stigma, the idea that if you have anxiety, if you have too much stress, if you have a depression from feeling like who you are isn't right in the place you live in, is wrong, is preventing us from seeing that it's merely what we're going through, what we can develop and grow out of. That as we feel these feelings and we cope in ways that harm us, as our depression leads to cutting, to binge drinking, to hooking up for the sake of running and feeling like you're not as alone in this lonely world as you are, we're losing sight of ourselves. We're losing sight of the fact that if we don't take time to look into this behavior, we won't see that we're not really addressing the issues at hand. Our coping is causing us to believe that we have nothing to work on. And our mental health is degrading in a world that does not place value on who you are emotionally as individuals. And yet here you sit in front of me, wanting a full life, wanting to be balanced, wanting to not be thrown here and to and fro and thusly by the storms and winds of your emotions and the environment shifting unpredictably around you. And yet with that want, that hunger, and that need, where is the investment in the part of you that will be addressing that unpredictability? Because your degree does not deal with an unpredictable world. Your status does not give you emotional balance. The amount of money you acquire in this life may buy you all the pretty fake friends you ever could dream of, but it will not
hand you understanding. So in this day and age, when you're evolving into a global reality, when your face, your culture, this time, the geography you share both online and in the physical realm, you are here with an opportunity to not live in the external. To understand that there are things you can work on that will impact and improve every other aspect of your life, especially those that matter whether you're fired, you're hired, you're at the top of the food chain, or the bottom. At the end of the day, how you feel about yourself when you fall asleep and how you feel about yourself when you wake up is more important than any car that impresses, any mother that brags to her friends about what you've done, or any type of bold confidence that you may achieve because Asian faces are in the movies today. So when I walk off of this stage, please consider that your physical health, which we are so inundated with ways and methods to improve, is just as vital and should be treated in the same fashion as your mental health. For it is within you that everything you've ever wanted will manifest, and it's time to make that pave the way for the things you actually want to manifest. Thank you.